In 1997, Jeff Bezos wrote a letter to Amazon shareholders. It was one page, direct, unusually honest for a corporate communication. It contained a single sentence that should have told every analyst, every investor, and every competitor exactly what was coming. He wrote, "It's all about the long term." For the next 20 years, Amazon reported losses or negligible profits in most quarters. Wall Street complained, analysts warned, competitors celebrated, and Bezos kept writing the same letter, with the same sentence attached, year after year. By the time anyone fully understood what he had been building, the machine was already unstoppable. Most people think Amazon is an online store that got very big. It is not an online store. It is one of the most deliberately engineered business systems ever constructed, designed from its first day to sacrifice short-term profitability in exchange for a set of compounding structural advantages that would eventually make it impossible to compete against. Today on Wealth Map, we are mapping the Amazon machine, the specific strategy, the specific mechanisms, and the specific decision that turned a Seattle bookstore into a company that now touches almost every aspect of modern economic life. Before we get to the machine itself, you need to understand the context that made it possible. In 1997, a publicly listed company was under enormous pressure to show quarterly profits. Wall Street valued companies on their current earnings. Investors expected returns. The entire financial system was structured to reward short-term profitability and punish companies that prioritize long-term investment over immediate returns. Bezos looked at this system and made a decision that almost no other public company CEO has ever made with the same consistency and conviction. He decided to ignore it. Every dollar Amazon earned would be reinvested immediately into infrastructure, into technology, into new business lines, into price reductions that made Amazon more competitive. The profit would never be allowed to sit on the balance sheet long enough for Wall Street to see it clearly. The losses Amazon reported were not evidence of a failing business. They were evidence of a business that was consuming its own profits faster than it was generating them deliberately, systematically, and with a specific destination in mind. The destination was structural dominance in every market it entered. The internal model that drove this strategy was something Bezos called the flywheel. He drew it on a napkin in 2001. It became the most important diagram in Amazon's history. The flywheel worked like this. Lower prices attract more customers. More customers mean more sales volume. More sales volume attracts more third-party sellers who want access to Amazon's customer base. More sellers mean more selection. More selection means a better customer experience. A better customer experience means lower prices are possible because the fixed costs of the platform are spread across more transactions. Each element of the flywheel drives every other element. The system is self-reinforcing, and crucially, the faster it spins, the harder it becomes to stop. This is why Amazon's strategy of absorbing losses in the short term was not reckless. It was the fuel that kept the flywheel spinning. Every dollar reinvested into lower prices or better infrastructure made the flywheel spin slightly faster. Slightly faster meant slightly more customers. Slightly more customers meant slightly more sellers, and so on, compounding relentlessly year after year. By the time competitors understood what was happening, the flywheel had been spinning for a decade and had accumulated a momentum that no amount of capital could easily replicate. But the flywheel was only the foundation, because the most important thing Amazon ever built was something nobody saw coming. In the early 2000s, Amazon was building the infrastructure to support its own explosive growth. Warehouses, servers, data centers, logistics networks. The company was investing billions in the physical and digital backbone required to run one of the world's largest retail operations. Then someone inside Amazon asked a question that changed the history of technology. If we have built all of this infrastructure for ourselves, why don't we rent it to other companies? Amazon Web Services launched in 2006. It offered businesses the ability to access computing power, storage, and networking infrastructure on demand, paying only for what they used, with no upfront capital investment required. The timing was perfect. The internet was expanding. Startups needed computing infrastructure but could not afford to build it themselves. Enterprises were looking for ways to reduce technology cost. AWS offered both groups exactly what they needed at exactly the moment they needed it. Today, Oz generates over $90 billion in annual revenue. Its operating margins exceed 30% compared to the low single digits of Amazon's retail operation. In most years, Oz generates the majority of Amazon's total operating profit. The world's most profitable cloud computing business was not planned. It was discovered, almost accidentally, by a retail company that had built infrastructure for its own purposes and then realized the infrastructure itself was a product. This is one of the most important lessons in the Amazon story. The most valuable thing Amazon ever built was not its store. It was the capability it developed to run the store, and the recognition that the capability was more valuable than the store itself. Amazon Prime tells a similar story from a different angle. Launched into 2005 as a flat-fee shipping program, pay one annual fee and receive unlimited today delivery, Prime looked on the surface like a customer loyalty initiative, a nice convenience for frequent shoppers. It was a trap, elegantly designed, entirely voluntary, and extraordinarily effective. Here is how it worked. Once a customer paid the annual Prime fee, they had a powerful psychological incentive to buy as much as possible from Amazon. Every purchase from a competitor felt like a waste of money they had already paid. The subscription had pre-committed their future purchasing behavior, not through any restriction, but through the simple mathematics of getting value from something you have already paid for. As Prime expanded to include streaming video, music, ebooks, cloud storage, and dozens of other services, the switching cost grew with every addition. Leaving Amazon Prime did not just mean losing fast shipping. It meant losing an entertainment platform, a music service, a reading library, and a dozen other utilities simultaneously. Prime members spend approximately 4 times as much on Amazon as non-Prime members. Not because they are wealthier, because they have been systematically embedded into an ecosystem designed to make every purchase decision default to Amazon before any competitor is considered. This is not a loyalty program. It is a behavior modification system at planetary scale. The final dimension of the Amazon strategy is the most uncomfortable one. When Amazon enters a new market, it does not compete on equal terms. It competes with a specific and historically consistent playbook. It enters with prices so low that existing competitors cannot match them without sustaining losses. It absorbs those losses from the profits of its other businesses, using AWS margins to subsidize retail price wars, using Prime subscription revenue to fund new market entry. It maintains this below-cost pricing long enough to drive the most vulnerable incumbents out of business. Then once the competitive landscape has been simplified, prices return to sustainable levels. This has happened in books, electronics, cloud computing, grocery retail, pharmacy, and logistics. Each time the pattern is recognizably the same. Each time the regulatory response has been insufficient to interrupt it. Each time the result has been a market with fewer competitors and Amazon with a larger share. Bezos understood something about competitive strategy that most business leaders never internalize completely. The goal is not to win a market. The goal is to make the market impossible for others to operate in profitably. These are different objectives. They require different strategies. And the second objective, pursued with sufficient capital and sufficient patience, produces a different kind of dominance than ordinary competition ever could. The Amazon story is not a story about e-commerce or cloud computing or logistics. It is a story about one man's willingness to communicate a strategy completely openly in an annual letter to shareholders for over 20 years, and have almost everyone who read it fail to understand what it described until it was too late to respond effectively. The strategy was always visible. The patience required to execute, it was simply too rare to be taken seriously by people whose incentive structures rewarded quarterly thinking. In a world built around the next 3 months, the person thinking about the next 20 years has an almost unfair advantage. Bezos understood this, built a machine around it, and let the letter do the explaining. This is Wealth Map, where the architecture of the world's greatest business empires becomes visible before everyone else catches up. Subscribe, because the next map reveals the single most powerful lever in the global economy, the one that every central bank on earth uses to control your financial life without you ever seeing it clearly.